Hi, it's Trisha Lamino over at the San Luis Obispo SELPA here with another video tutorial for you. This time we are looking at goal writing, and I could spend an entire day talking about goal writing and all the things that go into it. So we're going to keep this one brief and just show you the essentials of what you need to know. So, the first thing, if you have already written your present levels, which I suggest writing that first and foremost, and you have used formal and informal assessments, you have already identified that area of need and where you need to be writing your goals. So then we're going to create the baseline and we're going to write the goal and then identify those people responsible. So writing the baseline, you are going to use data. Okay, we're not putting our opinion in this area. This is for data. This is going to state specifically what the child can and cannot do in that specific goal area, just in that goal area. So what skills then do they need to develop? All right, so let me move my window here. This is a screenshot from SACE. This is what the goal page looks like at the very top. So we've identified our area, and for this is just an example I made up. So we have reading comprehension, and then I highly suggest that you number your goals. It just makes it so much easier when you're sitting in the IEP, so everyone is on the same page and they know which goal we're talking about. So in this one, I've identified the level that this child can read independently, out loud. How is she answering these comprehension questions? So I was giving specifics in there from data I have collected and assessments that I had completed with the child. So then the next area, we are going to look at what is going to be in our goals, okay? And for most kids, we're going to be using Common Core standards as our base. And then we want them to be SMART goals. And I'm sure everyone's heard of SMART goals. They're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So we're going to show you what we mean here. All right, so in SACE, it's pretty nice. They have a goal bank that you can use. And if you scroll down the page after you click on the green button there that you see on your, for the example, if you scroll down the page, you'll see that they are Common Core goals in English and in math. And for a lot of you, these are the buttons that you're going to be clicking on most of the time. Okay, but for our purposes here, we are going to practice writing our own goals because you're not going to be able to find everything you want within that goal bank. You'll be able to find a lot. And then I also suggest for those goals that you modify them for what's going to work for your student and what you're trying to accomplish. In those goals, there's a lot in there. So you really need to be specific when looking through it and not just copy and paste it in there and then leave it be. All right, so the first step that we're going to do when we're creating our own goal, we're going to establish the time frame. So this is in the very beginning. I'm sure most of you have seen it. So by, and then 1 year from this time. Okay, so we need that timeline. And then given what condition, all right? So when given a list of 100 words, when given a grade level nonfiction text, what is the given condition here? We need to identify that. Then we identify the who, which should be pretty simple. We just put the student's name. Don't just put student. It's very impersonal. So put the student's name and move on to the next section, which is does what. All right, so these are observable behaviors. It describes what the student will do to complete this goal or objective. So in our example here, we have they'll restate 3 details or facts from a passage, or they'll answer 5 comprehension questions, whatever it might be. What is the student going to be doing? Okay, so then mastery, all right, this is where we have our accuracy. All right, so is this going to be with 85% accuracy? Is it going to be with 70% accuracy? Again, this is when we talk about those SMART goals. Is it realistic? Is it attainable? So if they're starting off at the, 40, 50% level of accuracy in your baseline, maybe 90% is not realistic. So really think about what can this child accomplish within a year's time. So then our next criteria is how much, and so how many times are we going to be observing this? Is this going to be 4 out of 5 trials, 2 out of 3 trials? So you need to figure out what's appropriate for that specific task and how many trials it's going to be. All right, and then how will it be measured? This is really important. A lot of times I see people leave this last part off. How are we going to measure this? Is it going to be through teacher charted records? Is it going to be through a rubric? Is it going to be through student work samples? How are we going to know that the student has met it? How are we going to obtain our data for this? So then here we go. Let me move my window out of the way again. And we're going to put it all together. Okay, so we have by, and that's when we put in our date. When, the conditions under which the behavior observed. The student will, observable behavior, with, okay, so that's our performance accuracy. Then we have our trials, occasions as measured by, and then how are we going to be collecting that data? Okay, and then so let's look at a more specific example. See if we can get to the next slide here. So then we have our example here. We have the standard here. We have determined the main idea of a text, recount the key details, and explain how they support the main idea. Okay, so that's the standard that we're working off of. So then from there, our sample goal is by January 5th, 2020, again, it's that date is going to change for everyone, right? When given a grade level nonfiction passage, Joe will be able to identify the main idea and provide at least 3 details related to the main idea with 90% accuracy in 3 out of 4 trials as measured by student work samples. So we have all the different parts that we need for that goal in there. We have our date, so by. All right, we have the given, so when given a specific here. We have the observable behavior so that he's going to identify the main idea and provide details. We have our accuracy, and we have out of how many trials. And then last but not least, we have how we're going to collect that information, how we're going to collect the data to know if they met this goal. Okay, so the next portion, if your student is participating in an alternative assessment, the state assessments, you need to write short-term objectives. I'm not going to get into short-term objectives today, but you need to have that annual goal broken down into objectives. All right, then we get into underneath where you have the annual goal, there's other important boxes that a lot of people forget about. So we have our purpose of our goal. Okay, so this is where if it's based off the Common Core standard, so it's something from reading or math, we want to check that box and put the standard number in there. Now, if you're getting it off of the SACE Goal Bank, it does it for you, which is really nice. Then underneath, let's say it addresses a different area from the disability. Maybe it's because of executive functioning or a behavior or whatever it might be. We would then check the next box down. And then if you have a second language learner, you need to make sure, and it's an English goal, you need to make sure that it is linguistically appropriate. Let me get my box out of here. And then if you have a transition goal, make sure it's linked there, and then people responsible. So tips from experience, reread your goals. If you create it without the goal bank, read it aloud, make sure it makes sense, and make sure you checked all the boxes. If you have any suggestions for the next video, send me a message.